called in 2011 the Arab Spring. This is what we all warned was actually a Islamist revolution and a caliphate in the Middle East, whose purposes are to destroy Israel first and then America. So if you think you're getting a great shake in all this, first comes Saturday, then comes Sunday. This will be your problem soon. Botsy Susskind-Sacks is joining us from Israel in Nashville. You got to get better friends.
Well, we're trying.
Hanging out with John Ford Coley? Seriously. You've got all this world. You have such an interesting background, and there's so much we want to talk to you about in this segment. You know, there's a lot of conversation about Ron Paul. Israel can take care of itself. We got no business there. Now the rumors that he feels like it was a mistake to stop Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. Oh. And your parents, of course, are Holocaust survivors. So, sure. You know, all of us have a historic perspective, a policy perspective, but this is your home. This is your roots. This is your family tree that people are discussing. And it just begs the question, before we get to the activism portion of why you're here, just in general, how people in Israel are feeling. You know, when I talk to Israeli leadership, I sense that they know that the American people are behind them, and I sense that they clearly know this president is not. But you wonder, with other candidates for president speaking such nonsense, if that gets drawn into question as well.
Well, yes, we do. America and Israel have a long history of friendship, and I'm also an American citizen, a naturalized one, so I'm a very proud one. I think this is a great country. It welcomed me, and I would like to see that wonderful relationship continuing. There is a good relationship between Israel and the American people, and it's very interesting. Before I vote as an American citizen. Wherever I am in the world, I do vote because I feel it's my duty as an American citizen. I try to make informed decisions, and what's really interesting to me is before the last election, I called a friend of mine in New York who is a staunch Democrat, and I said to him, Don, listen, I want to make an informed decision. I've never heard of this meteor, Obama. What can you tell me about him? I want to make an informed decision. He said, as a Democrat, I'm telling you, promise me one thing, you will never vote for him. And that's a Democrat telling me before the 2008 election. And I'm just thinking, why did he know what other Americans did not know? How come?
Well, because of his mentors, because of his upbringing. You know, Barack Obama was a liberation theologist at Trinity Church, which is very pro-Palestinian, very anti-Israel. It's not very fond of Christians. In fact, its religion is really race. Its God is race. Its loyalty is to Africa. And its gospel is redistribution of wealth. But it's very, very pro-Palestinian, very anti-Israeli, which is why the church made its man of the decade, I think. Yeah. Or maybe it was the man of the century, was Louis Farrakhan, which is, you know, one of the things we were talking about off the air, all the strange bedfellows when you're trying to fight this narrative. Let's talk about the narrative, because you feel the need to speak the truth. And the narrative never seems to center around, and I find this the most remarkable, the Prophet Muhammad, who left an example. It never seems to center around the 109 verses in the Quran calling them to convert or kill. They seem to set this narrative as peace-loving and multicultural and all-inclusive, and yet everywhere where they're in population control, there's anything but peace.
Okay, that's what I was told initially. Somebody said to me, Islam it's the same root as the word salam, which in Arabic means peace. And then when I became more educated about the subject, I'm still not an expert on the subject of Islam, the first thing I was told, Islam literally means submission.
Submission.
And anybody who tries to tell you that it's the same root as salam, peace, please do not believe it. Right. I have no problems with moderate Muslims. My only problem with them is that they're not vocal. Not vocal enough, let me put it this way, because I'm sure there are good people among them who would like to see peace and would like to see tranquility around the world. But why aren't they speaking? Afraid of the radicals? Why are they letting the radicals control them? We have radicals among us. Christians have radicals among them. Every religion, every group of people does have radicals. The question is how much...
Well, but the problem is, what is a radical Christian? Somebody that goes around feeding the poor, clothing the naked? That would be a radical Christian. Well, truth of the matter is, you start going out and killing people, you kill an abortion doctor, that is counter to the example Christ left and counter to his teachings. The problem for even moderate Muslims are, bin Laden, by Quran, by example of Muhammad, was a good Muslim. These moderates are infidels like me.
And since we're talking about the Quran, one of the questions that John and I were contemplating answering really is, do I think there's ever going to be peace between Hamas and Israel and Fatah in Israel? Especially now that Hamas and Fatah are, bedfellows.
Well, I was just going to say, if my goal is to kill you,
Yeah.
how are we going to find common ground?
That's not only
Where to
that.
bury you? Is that the common ground?
That's one of the problems. But the other problem is, in order to make peace, they will have to give up land. And from my understanding of the Quran, you're not any piece of land that a Muslim soldier ever set foot on is never to be given up. And that's why they cannot, it would be against the Quran to give up any land. And in fact, in the city of Hebron, we have a sheikh by the name of Sheikh Jabari. And Sheikh Jabari works together with Israel. And he joins hands with Israel fighting the establishment of a Palestinian state. Not because he's a Zionist. For this very reason, he realizes that in order to establish a Palestinian state, they will have to give up Arab land. And he's against giving up Arab land. And he said, only when Messiah comes, then we will resolve this issue. So it's the issue of giving up land that is really at the core, pretty much, of the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Muslims are not allowed to give up
don't
land.
you ever get, I mean, I'm a friend of Israel, but I mean, if I was, if that was my home, I would be so insulted. I think Bibi Netanyahu said at one time so flawless, he was like, we're not a settlement. We're a sovereign nation.
Absolutely.
We're a sovereign state. This is our capital city. If we want to build apartments, we'll build apartments. I mean, it's as if some idiot, and I wasn't a fan of the Bush roadmap to peace. Then you get Obama, which is a roadmap for disaster. He wants to return to pre-67 borders. I don't think he's interested in doing the same with Mexico and in the Native Americans here in America. But I mean, this notion of, the sovereignty of Israel, and with friends like us, who needs enemies?
And that's exactly what irritates me. People say to me, Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel. And I said, why not? You know what they're telling me? They say, it's because nobody around the world recognizes it as such. I don't care. You open any basic, any book and any basic definition of what defines a capital city, it says it's the place of the residence of the president of that country. It's where the government offices are, and where it's that country chooses its capital to be. According to these three criteria, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and will forever remain as such. My issue also with people who say Jerusalem needs to be divided, I ask them, okay, who forced Israel to reunite Jerusalem? We didn't choose that. They imposed a war on us. And as a result of that war, they created the reality on the ground of reuniting Jerusalem. Why was the world so happy when the Berlin Wall fell and Germany and Berlin got reunited? Why are they looking to divide a city that is already united and peaceful? And you should see Arabs in East Jerusalem. They would rather be Israeli citizens or residents of Israel, because the city is thriving. If you go to Jerusalem, it's a booming city. Israel is a booming country. Anybody who just sets foot in Israel sees growth, 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 and growth. The economy is strong. We didn't undergo the crisis that the rest of the world did, and we are just booming. And Jerusalem is included in it. Jerusalem, as a united city, is thriving.
And then you have Hamas, who, by the way, doesn't want to recognize Israel's right to exist any more than anybody else, players in the Middle East. And yet you're supposed to sit down at the table and come to some kind of a mutual agreement? It's impossible. The whole thing's a farce.
I think it's our fault. Israel has let the world get to that situation because we have let the Arab narrative go on for too long. And I believe it was Dr. Goebbels, who was Hitler's minister of propaganda. He said, a lie repeated 1,000 times.
Bigger the lie, the easier it is to get
becomes truth. Exactly. And we should have stopped that lie in its prime. We should have cut it. We should have killed it in its prime. When I came back to Israel, I realized how ignorant many Israelis are about our own history. Even if we don't use the biblical argument that God gave it to Abraham and to his descendants, we just look at history. History is on our side. After World War I, when the Turks were kicked out of the Middle East, with the Turkish Empire falling apart, and the Supreme Council of the Five met in San Remo, Italy, to the San Remo Conference in 1920, they created a covenant. And according to that covenant, the whole of the ancient Palestine, of course, we all know that Palestine is a very artificial name given by the Romans to an area that was the land of Israel, which we call Eretz Israel.
And later brought back by Arafat.
Yes, did you know that the Palestinian nation is a relatively young nation? It was created on June 5th, 1967. We never heard of the Palestinian
state. Well, Newt Gingrich stated such accurate history, and everybody was shocked and outraged that he would state a reality.
And just to go back, that is anchored in international law, that all of ancient Eretz Israel or Palestine, both sides of the Jordan River, belong to the Jewish people. That's a Jewish homeland. And the Arabs, headed by Faisal in those days, were happy with that division, were happy with that law. Why did we not persist on educating the world about that law? Now we have to go back and undo tons of disinformation, and I distinguish between misinformation and disinformation. Disinformation is deliberate misinformation, and that's what they have been fed all these years.
Patsy Susskind-Sacks is in Nashville by way of Israel, and we'll continue our discussion. It looks as though, surrounded by enemies, the world has united against Israel, and it looks like, with this president anyway, America's on the sidelines. How close are we to war, and why should America stand by Israel? We continue with Patsy in a moment. First, 8:17 in the morning. It's a cloudy, wet, breezy, chilly drive to work. That's the bad news. Good news is nobody seems to be on the road. Michael Vance with traffic and weather together. Well, the President of the United States can take a vacation, but our enemies don't. And so we have had much sectarian strife, including Nigerian Christians killed in their churches by Muslims, Al-Qaeda taking responsibility for blasts throughout Baghdad. A suicide bomber killed 7 outside the Iraqi ministry. No sign we left too early. And at least 20 more killed while the Arab League monitors were arriving in Syria. Meanwhile, Iran continues its 10-day war games along the Strait of Hormuz, as well as in the Gulf. They'll be coming into contact with the U.S. Naval ships, and they have extended, by way of their military chief of staff, some military opportunities and control for Iraq. They will fill that vacuum as they're on the road to being nuclear, as Hezbollah has control of Lebanon with missiles on the border of Israel, as the Muslim Brotherhood takes control of Egypt, the new Iran. And Al-Qaeda now seems to be in control of Libya. Still think it was a spring? Patsy Susskind-Sacks is joining us. Patsy's actually a naturalized U.S. citizen by way of Israel and now living in Israel as well, yes. Part-time. And we're fascinated with how all these stories relate on the ground in Israel. And, you know, the truth of the matter is America doesn't understand much about its own history, and that's why they're not outraged when the president tries to rewrite it. And we certainly don't study civics much anymore. And in reality, we're probably the divided states of America, not the United States of America. How much unity on the ground is there in Israel? Do you have this same right versus left to where it becomes such insane narrative that nobody can even recognize right and wrong? Or
unfortunately, I mean, it is fortunate. Israel is a democracy. I mean, it is fortunate, but democracy can shoot itself in its leg sometimes, and that's what's happening in Israel right now. The left has been given the opportunity to express itself, and it's really taken over. It has really infiltrated every possible area in the Israeli system. The legal system, we feel the Supreme Court is really siding with the left most of the time. The media definitely. But
is there actually a movement inside Israel to give terrorists a bigger portion of Israel, knowing they want all of it, not a portion? I mean,
well, the left, the Israeli left, is very strong, and it is sponsored by some very powerful international organizations like the New Israel Fund, George Soros. I'm sure you've heard the name before. Yeah. And just to give you an idea, I was part of a right demonstration of the right against a very major leftist demonstration several months ago. And they came in air-conditioned buses. I came by hitchhiking. I didn't have a car then. I came by hitchhiking. They came with printed T-shirts. They came with printed signs. We came with signs. You can see that sign on my Facebook picture. It says, Jordan is Palestine. I'm holding a handwritten sign. I'm covered not with a T-shirt. I mean, I do have a T-shirt, but not a printed one, just the flag of Israel. You know, the real Zionist spirit was through us, and we were very few, but you could feel that every step that we took was a step in, you know, in support of God, in support of justice, in support of our right to be there as our only home.
I've read Ezekiel and the prophecy of Gog and Magog, and I see where Russia is today. I see where China, North Korea is today. I see where Iran is. I see how we've lost Turkey. The alignment of Syria and Lebanon, Iran, potentially Iraq, and you just surrounded. I mean, the world is united against Israel. Do Israelis sense the clear and present danger that I sense for them?
I don't think so. I mean, we are very comfortable in Israel. To tell you the truth, maybe it's because we see the reality on the ground and we're closer to it, and things tend to be magnified when you're from far away and you're really not part of the reality there. I mean, I'm not saying that people are not aware of the danger that is imminent. The question is how soon it's going to happen, or if it's going to happen, or it is going to happen, but when is it going to happen? And
would they be more inclined to wait to be struck, or be more inclined to take a preemptive strike?
Depending what you mean by what is preemptive strike, there are a lot of little things that we hear about going on, whether it's negotiations or I don't know how responsible Israel is for certain little things that are happening, accidents that are happening along the road. I'm not. People are telling me, oh, it's probably the Israeli Mossad doing work. I'm not aware of it. But I know there are certain sides that are pushing not to do the preemptive strike. Because they said it will take time, and there are other means. Whatever those other means are, is up to them.
You know, kind of coming full circle, we talked about how, you know, I think most Israelis sense the American people are behind them, maybe not this president. Is there a sense that on the street there that there is a future for Israel with conflict, and as to whether or not the U.S. at the end will be there to her aid, or do they kind of, I guess, here's a crude way of putting it. Are they just kind of hoping this election comes and goes and we get a real president again that supports Israel before something bad happens? Are they even aware of the presidential candidates?
They are aware, but they don't spend much time. Right now, everybody's so concerned about the reality in the Middle East or the fighting, their daily fights. But as a believer in Hashem, that's my way of referring to God,
right.
But as a believer in Hashem, I really believe we are going to be there. Because in Hebrew we have a saying, Netzach Israel lo yeshaker, which means the eternal of Israel shall never lie. And he has never lied to us, and he will never lie to us. We're going to be there, regardless of what happens, big or small. I guess we're always meant to be a small nation. We're going to be there.
But is it possible that Christians are following Gog and Magog, the prophet Ezekiel, and how much it's coming true, more so than the Jews are?
I think so. I
Wow.
really think so.
Just because they don't go beyond the Torah, or
Because we know that Hashem is with us, so regardless of what happens, we are still going to be there. And I think every sign we have is that despite what's happening to us, okay, we're paying a very dear price right now, as far as lives, cost of lives, and as far as reputation, we're paying a very dear price. But we believe that at the end of the road, at the end of the day, Hashem will be with us.
Oh, he will. I've read it. Final moments with Abatzi Susskind-Sacks. Why is it so important that the American people understand what an earned strategic ally Israel is of the United States, though greatly shunned and disrespected by this current president? And what's the narrative you would like to bring to them that is in such opposition to the general political correct narrative that they're shoved down their throat every day?
Okay, I'll share with the audience what I shared with you earlier. When I speak, I like to start my conversation, my lecture, by telling people the importance of Israel being there as a strategic ally, because Israel has always been in the forefront of every terrorist calamity that befell the world, and Israel survived it, developed the technology to continue to fight it, and shared it with the rest of the world. And I believe the world needs a strong Israel. I quote a German pastor by the name of Pastor Neumüller, who said in 1946, first they came for the Catholics, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Catholic. Then they came for the Jews, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to say anything. If the world wants there to be someone to speak for them, when they come for them, and trust me, they will come for them, they need to keep Israel strong.
All right. Well, Batzi, it's been great getting your perspective from an Israeli perspective. For those that want to follow you, websites, do we have anything? Or
Yeah, I have my Facebook page, but I also have, I'm also a fitness expert, so I have my own.
I was actually going to say that, but at the risk of sounding like Herman Cain, I was going to say, is everybody from Israel this beautiful?
Thank you. Thank you.
Because I got two words for you. One, age, like the rest of us, and because you look gorgeous.
Thank you.
Have a very safe stay in Nashville, and we appreciate your insights from inside Israel.
Thanks
for
so
coming
much.
with us this morning.
My pleasure.
And then you didn't even bring your guitar, you worthless thing.
I came to support.
But by way of Asia, where he is like the Jerry Lewis. Where were you at just recently? You were actually in Malaysia, weren't you?
Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines.
I called him the other day. We were driving around. I'll just tell one quick story. And I'm listening to my satellite radio, and I'm singing England Dan and John Ford Coley. And I thought, I'll call him, and I'll sing it to him. And then I realized I was at where I was going for lunch. I thought, well, I don't want to call him because then I got to get out of the car. So I waited. I sit down at my table literally 2 minutes later, and he rings to tell me that you're coming to town. And we were both thinking of each other at the exact same time. John Ford Coley, a friend of Israel, a friend of WTN. Thanks for bringing Botsy to us. God bless you, my brother. I love you. I still can't believe I'm your friend. I thought you were a big star. I want that royalty check. That's what I was calling. I was calling to tell him, you're getting a check from Sirius XM 70s on 7. All right, 8:31. Thanks, Botsy. All right, 8:30.